What is a
fundamental-
birthing person?
Sir, I am here to talk about the Doge impact.
Well, I'm
for
asking
working
you about this
families.
grant and you're defending it. So I'm asking you, who is birthing people? Do you think that that is a useful spend of our tax dollars?
I think government investment in all kinds of scientific research is of the utmost importance.
Including pregnancy prevention for transgender boys. Okay. Do you think that we should be spending money on, quote, the racialized basis of trait judgments from faces?
I am not at all familiar with that grant.
It's a $500,000 NSF grant.
Okay, I am not familiar with the subject matter or the
Right.
particular
But you're
grant.
defending these.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel that cuts through the political nonsense and tells you the truth about what's really happening in Washington. If you believe in putting America and American taxpayers first, make sure you hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. We're growing every single day because patriots like you are hungry for the real story, not the sanitized version the mainstream media feeds you. And hey, if you want to support independent journalism and help us keep bringing you this content, head over to patreon.com/AmericaFirst where you can support us for as low as $5 a month. Every dollar helps us stay independent and keep fighting for the truth. Now, let's dive into today's video. Folks, I just watched something that made my blood boil, and I had to share it with you immediately. We're looking at a congressional hearing where Senator Brandon Gill absolutely grilled a witness named Miss Devito about the wasteful spending that's been going on under the guise of scientific research. And let me tell you, what you're about to hear will make you understand exactly why we need people like Senator Gill fighting for us in Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It never gets boring in here. And I'd like to say thank you to the witnesses for being here and for taking the time. Miss Devito, thank you for coming here. In your testimony, you said that Americans deserve a government that works for them, a government that makes their lives easier and more secure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great. I'd like to read through a couple of the grants that Doge has pulled back, and I'd like to get your take on them. They pulled back a $1.5 million NIH grant to Morehouse College. It was called the Center to Advance Reproductive Justice and Behavioral Health among Black, pregnant/postpartum women and birthing people. Do you think that that makes Americans' lives easier and more secure?
I think that medical and scientific research of all types.
Do you think that
benefits-
that constitutes critical research? According to your testimony, NIH grants are critical research,
I think that government research of all types in the medical. and
including
public-
birthing people?
I think bench research of all types plays a fundamental
What is a
role.
birthing person?
Sir, I am here to talk about the Doge impact.
Well, I'm
for
asking
working
you about this
families.
grant and you're defending it. So I'm asking you, who is birthing people?
I am not familiar with this grant.
Mm-hmm.
I take a position that all kinds of government research, medical,
Is a
pharmaceutical,
birthing person a woman? Is that another
biological-
word for female?
That is outside the scope of my expertise.
Seems like erasure language to me. I've been told that that type of vernacular constitutes erasure language. How about another one? How about the conference, Gender Equity in the Mathematical Study of Commutative Algebra? Do you think that that's a valid form of government spending?
I think mathematical research of all types is deserving of government.
What about
investment.
studying, and this is directly from the National Science Foundation's website, women and non-binary mathematicians?
Again, I think all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematical.
All kinds of government investment.
scientific-
You don't have any kind of limit on what we're spending our money on, just everything? Is that your testimony?
I am talking about Doge. You brought up a
So am
grant.
I. This is a grant that Doge cut.
I am not familiar with this particular grant,
Mm-hmm.
but I think government investment in mathematical,
Okay.
biological.
Let's do another one. This one is called hashtag Transcendent Health, adapting an LGB plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. I can't even say this without laughing. Do you think that that is a useful form of our tax spend?
I am not familiar with that grant, but I think bench research, government investment in scientific and
teen
pharmaceutical
pregnancy
research.
for transgender boys. Do you think that that is a useful spend of our tax dollars?
I think government investment in all kinds of scientific research is of the utmost importance.
Including pregnancy prevention for transgender boys. Okay. Let me ask you, we can come back to this later maybe. Do you support abolishing the filibuster still?
I am here to talk about Doge respectfully.
Right.
and
We could abolish the filibuster and get a lot of Doge cuts through. And you've written at length on your Twitter about abolishing the filibuster. I'm just curious if you think that we should do that still.
I did a lot of previous work on different topics because
Mm-hmm.
I am an economic policy expert, and respectfully, I'm here to talk about Doge cuts.
Okay, but we could abolish the filibuster and get Doge cuts. This is totally germane here. Do you think we should?
I am here to talk about Doge cuts, not strategies for achieving more of them, but the harms that they have produced for working families.
It's a convenient change of opinion. I noticed that most of your comments about the filibuster were during the Biden administration. But we can move on. Let's go back to some more of these grants. Do you think that we should be spending money on, quote, the racialized basis of trait judgments from faces?
I am not at all familiar with that grant.
It's a $500,000 NSF grant.
Okay, I am not familiar with the subject matter or the
Right,
particular
but you're
grant.
defending these.
I am saying that I think the government
You're pretty
has-
adamant against Doge cuts, and I'm asking you if you support the cuts
I think that
that
there
Doge
is
has found.
economic and medical, public health, communal benefit to
What
the
about
government investing in.
cross-sex steroid therapy and cardiovascular risk in the transgender female?
Again, I think government investment in scientific research is
Right.
important.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it.
This hearing was about Doge cuts, and for those who might not be familiar, Doge stands for the Department of Government Efficiency, which is exactly what we need more of in this bloated, wasteful federal government. Senator Gill took this witness to task over some of the most ridiculous, politically motivated spending you've ever heard of, and her responses were absolutely telling. Let's start with the first grant Senator Gill brought up. We're talking about a $1.5 million grant to Morehouse College for something called the Center to Advance Reproductive Justice and Behavioral Health among Black pregnant women and birthing people. Now, right off the bat, you notice the language here. Senator Gill pressed this witness on what exactly a birthing person is, and folks, this is exactly the kind of questioning we need more of. The witness, Miss Devito, completely dodged the question. When pressed about what a birthing person is, she said it was outside the scope of her expertise. Outside the scope of her expertise? She's defending spending taxpayer money on grants that use this terminology, but she can't even explain what it means? This is the kind of bureaucratic doublespeak that drives hardworking Americans absolutely crazy. Senator Gill called it eraser language, and he's absolutely right. This is part of the broader attack on women and the traditional understanding of biology that we're seeing across our institutions. They can't say woman anymore. They have to use these convoluted terms like birthing people because they're so afraid of offending the radical transgender ideology that's taken over our academic institutions. But here's what really gets me fired up. When Senator Gill asked if this constitutes useful spending of tax dollars, Miss Devito just kept repeating the same talking points about how all government research is important. All government research? Really? There's no limit to what we should be spending money on? This is exactly the mentality that's gotten us into a $33 trillion national debt. Then Senator Gill brought up another grant that made me shake my head. We're talking about taxpayer money going to study gender equity in the mathematical study of commutative algebra. Gender equity in math? Are you kidding me? This is the kind of politically motivated pseudoscience that's infected our universities and now our government funding. The grant specifically mentions women and non-binary mathematicians. Again, we see this push to inject gender ideology into every single aspect of academic life, even mathematics. Mathematics is supposed to be objective. Numbers don't care about your gender identity. 2 + 2 equals for whether you're a man, woman, or whatever made-up category you want to put yourself in. But somehow, we're spending taxpayer money to study gender equity in math. And Miss DeVito's response? The same robotic answer. all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematics. No critical thinking, no consideration of whether this is actually beneficial to society or advancing mathematical knowledge. Just blind support for any spending as long as it has the word research attached to it. But folks, it gets even more ridiculous. Senator Gill brought up a grant called Transcendent Health, which is adapting an LGB plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. Let that sink in for a moment. We're spending taxpayer money on pregnancy prevention for transgender boys. Senator Gill said he couldn't even say it without laughing, and honestly, I don't blame him. This is where we've gotten to in America. We're so deep into this gender ideology nonsense that we're pretending biological males who identify as boys can get pregnant. It's completely divorced from reality, and yet our government is funding it with your hard-earned tax dollars. This isn't science, it's political activism masquerading as research. What really struck me about this exchange was how Miss Devito responded to every single question with the same programmed answer about government investment in scientific research being important. She never once acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, some of these grants might not be the best use of taxpayer money. She never once showed any fiscal responsibility or concern for the American people who are struggling to pay their bills while their tax dollars go to fund this ideological garbage. Senator Gill also brought up another grant about the racialized basis of trait judgments from faces. A $500,000 NSF grant. $500,000 to study how people judge faces based on race. Does anyone else see the irony here? We're constantly told that we need to move beyond race, that we need to be colorblind, that judging people based on race is wrong. But then we turn around and spend $500,000 studying exactly that. This is the kind of research that divides Americans rather than unites us. Instead of studying things that could actually improve people's lives, create jobs, or strengthen our national security, we're funding studies that seem designed to create more racial tension and division. And then there's the grant about cross-sex steroid therapy and cardiovascular risk in transgender females. Again, we see taxpayer money being used to advance transgender ideology under the guise of health research. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't study health issues, but when you look at the pattern of these grants, it's clear that there's a political agenda at work here. What Senator Gill was doing in this hearing was exactly what we need more of in Congress. He was asking the hard questions, pressing for specifics, and refusing to accept bureaucratic non-answers. When Miss Devito tried to deflect by saying she wasn't familiar with specific grants, Senator Gill didn't let her off the hook. He kept pressing because she was defending the spending without even knowing what she was defending. This is accountability in action, folks. This is what it looks like when our representatives actually represent us instead of the bureaucratic establishment. Senator Gill wasn't just asking questions for show. He was exposing the wasteful, ideologically driven spending that's been happening under our noses for years. The most telling part of this entire exchange was when Senator Gill asked Miss Devito if there should be any limits on government spending. Her response? That she supports government investment in all kinds of research. All kinds. No limits. No prioritización. No consideration of fiscal responsibility or what's actually beneficial to the American people. This mentality is exactly what's wrong with Washington. These bureaucrats and their academic allies see taxpayer money as an endless piggy bank for their pet projects and ideological crusades. They never have to worry about making payroll, paying rent, or choosing between groceries and gas like regular Americans do. To them, it's all just numbers on a spreadsheet. But to us, it's our hard work. It's the money we earn that gets taken out of our paychecks before we even see it. It's money that could be going to our families, our communities, our actual needs, instead of funding research into whether transgender boys can get pregnant. Senator Gill also tried to pivot the conversation to ask about Miss Devito's previous positions on abolishing the filibuster, which was actually a brilliant tactical move. See, the filibuster is one of the last remaining checks on unlimited government power. It forces the majority party to actually build consensus instead of just ramming through whatever they want with a simple majority. Miss Devito had apparently written extensively about abolishing the filibuster during the Biden administration, when Democrats wanted to push through their radical agenda without any Republican input. But now that she's testifying about Doge cuts, she suddenly doesn't want to talk about procedural issues in Congress. How convenient. Senator Gill pointed out this convenient change of opinion, noting that most of her comments about the filibuster were during the Biden administration. This is exactly the kind of political opportunism we see from the left all the time. When they're in power, they want to eliminate any barriers to getting what they want. When they're not in power, suddenly they care about institutional norms and procedures. The broader issue here, folks, is that we have a massive federal bureaucracy that operates with virtually no accountability to the American people. These grants get approved, money gets spent, and nobody asks whether any of it actually benefits the country or advances legitimate scientific knowledge. It's all just part of the academic industrial complex that feeds off taxpayer dollars while pushing a leftist political agenda. Think about what this money could be used for instead. We have crumbling infrastructure in this country. We have veterans who aren't getting the care they deserve. We have small businesses struggling under regulatory burdens. We have working families who can barely make ends meet because of inflation and high taxes. But instead of addressing these real problems, we're spending millions on gender ideology research and racial grievance studies. This is why the Doge initiative is so important, and it's why we need more people like Senator Gill who are willing to ask these tough questions and demand accountability. We can't continue to treat the federal treasury like a charity fund for every half-baked academic theory that comes down the pike. The American people deserve better. We deserve a government that spends our money wisely on things that actually matter. We deserve research that advances human knowledge and improves lives, not research that advances political agendas. We deserve representatives who fight for our interests, not the interests of the academic and bureaucratic elite. What Senator Gill did in this hearing was shine a spotlight on the waste and ideological capture that's plagued our federal spending for far too long. Every American should watch this exchange and ask themselves whether this is really how they want their tax dollars spent. The fact that Miss Devito couldn't or wouldn't answer basic questions about the grants she was defending tells you everything you need to know about how this system works. These people operate in an echo chamber where questioning their priorities or methods is seen as somehow anti-science or anti-education. But asking for accountability isn't anti-anything except anti-waste. We need to support representatives like Senator Gill who are willing to do the hard work of oversight and accountability. We need to demand that our government spending actually serves the American people, not just the ideological preferences of academic elites. And we need to continue exposing this kind of wasteful spending so that the American people can see exactly how their money is being used. This hearing is just one example of the kind of scrutiny that needs to be applied to every federal agency and every government program. We need to ask tough questions about what we're funding and why. We need to demand results and accountability. And we need to stop treating taxpayer money like it grows on trees. The bottom line is this: government has a responsibility to spend our money wisely and for legitimate purposes that benefit the American people. Funding ideologically driven research that serves no practical purpose and often actually harms social cohesion is not fulfilling that responsibility. It's time for accountability, and it's time for change. That's why channels like this one are so important. We're committed to bringing you the truth about what's happening in Washington, even when that truth is uncomfortable or politically incorrect. The mainstream media won't show you exchanges like this because they don't want you to know how your money is really being spent. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content, and remember to support us at patreon.com/America First. With your help, we can continue to bring you the real story behind the headlines and hold our government accountable to the people it's supposed to serve. Thanks for watching, and remember, America First isn't just a slogan, it's a commitment to putting the interests of American citizens above the pet projects of Washington elites. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'll see you in the next video.